People in this world react differently to things throughout the game.
Yeah, sorry about the wait, and the change of plans. Role-playing games have been a part of the gaming medium since its inception. As time has gone by, innovators and iterators have come and gone, changed, and evolved. Some franchises lost to the ether of time. Japan was one of the pioneers of the role-playing game on video game consoles all the way back to the NES and Super Nintendo. From Chrono Trigger to Dragon Quest, and of course, Final Fantasy, RPGs have stuck around for a long time, and have become one of the biggest genres of games in the industry. Japan especially has a grip hold on the RPG scene, with their holy trinity of Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and lastly, Tales of. The Tales franchise had been around since the PlayStation 1, with the release of Tales of Phantasia in 1995. With Tales continuing to push itself further and further into the gaming landscape, with hit after hit after hit, eventually, an anniversary project would come up. And that's where Tales of Xillia, the 13th Mothership title in the series, would be born. Tales of Xillia's development was very hard to pinpoint, because unlike, say for instance, Halo 2, Xillia's development cycle was very secretive and sparsely documented. The only concrete sources I could find was from archived articles on the Wayback Machine, some of which were taken down and I was unable to access. Along with that, other people I asked weren't of much help either. Even after asking Reddit, theRadBrad, another person who did an analysis of this game, and even the Tales of Discord, I wasn't able to find any other information. So take everything said in this section with a grain of salt. But from the research I've done, this is the clearest narrative I've been able to create. Tales of Xillia began production in 2008, after Tales of Hearts finished development for the Nintendo DS. Nothing is known about the development before this point in time, but once the date became July 28, 2010, Weekly Shonen Jump, of all things, revealed that a new Tales game for the PlayStation 3 was in the works, and was confirmed by Bandai Namco themselves on August 2nd, not even a week after the news was heard. At the time, Bandai Namco announced that there was a new Tales game being produced for the PlayStation 3, simply being referred to as New Tales, along with a port of the previously Wii exclusive Tales of Graces, now being named Tales of Graces F, adding new content, including an epilogue chapter to the game's main story. Plus, there was a third game eventually announced titled Tales of the World Radiant Mythology 3, a crossover with all the Tales characters. People in Japan got excited upon hearing the news, and 4 months later, on December 15th, Tales of Xillia was revealed to the world in Weekly Shonen Jump, and on their official website, with the game being referred to as the RPG of Unwavering Convictions. The website revealed the two main characters and their background, Jude being a medical student who, quote, is an excellent student who gets things done, and Mila being described as a master of spirits who can control the four elements, earth, water, fire, and wind. In a developer interview with producer Hideo Baba mentioned how Xillia was going to be the culmination of the experience the development team learned over the last 15 years of producing the Tales series. He mentioned how he wished to change up the art style and make the visuals more mature and towards an older demographic, compared to the cel-shaded anime aesthetic of Tales of Vesperia and the watercolor visuals of Tales of Graces. Within the early months of 2011, Bandai Namco released information about the other party members, going in order, Alvin, then Leia Rolando, then Elise Ludus, and lastly, Rowan Ilbert. They described their personalities, gave a brief explanation of their introduction into the story, and their main gimmick in combat. Once May of 2011 rolled around, Bandai Namco revealed the game's release date of September 8th, 2011 in Japan, along with revealing a limited edition Xillia-themed PS3, and the game's title song was released. However, there was an issue regarding a leak. I cannot confirm this to be true, as the leak itself has evaded my eyes, perhaps taken off the internet. But according to the article I found, details about the game's story were leaked a week or so prior to the game's release in Japan. The details I do know, however, is that they were leaked from a supposed scenario book that was to be given with Xillia's Korean version. Bandai Namco revealed that the leak was a result of a Korean publisher who planned on publishing a guide for the game. Bamco added that portions of that guide were apparently leaked onto the internet, and denied the existence of this scenario book. Apparently, due to time constraints, there was cut content from Xillia, such as the existence of 2 other playable characters, Gaius and Muse, both of whom ended up as being the game's final antagonists, plus the existence of a hot spring scene, both things that were added in the sequel, released 2 years later. Plus, I have my suspicions that there were also technical issues, since the game is notorious for being possibly the only Tales game to have issues such as this. Now, then there's the topic of the North American and PAL versions, which got Xillia 1 almost 2 years after the Japanese did, and it started in March 2012, when Bandai Namco Europe trademarked Tales of Xillia in North America and Europe. Plus, the announcement was officially made on Twitter, of all things, on July 6, 2012. On November 5th, Ted Sung, the North American producer for Tales of Xillia, announced that the English dub was complete, describing the entire process as mentally and physically taxing for everyone involved, with Bamco getting support from Cup of Tea and a studio called 8-4, or 8-4. I don't know. The dubbing was described to have changed from the original Japanese voice direction, such as making Jude and Mila's voices pitched down a little more compared to their Japanese counterparts, with Mila being described as, quote, "We needed her to maintain a very powerful and authoritative demeanor, so we didn't find it appropriate maintaining that same pitch as her Japanese voice." And Jude being described as, quote, "He maintains the same adolescent qualities in the Japanese version, but we figured the North American audience would prefer a lower, stronger voice." I do have hiccups about the game's dubbing in certain aspects that I'll touch on later, but regardless, the team was happy with the dub and the game. Now, all that was left was to witness its reception, on September 8th, 2011 in Japan, and August 6th, 2013 in North America. Tales of is praised for its fast-paced, action-focused combat systems, rivaling proper action games for how enjoyable they can be. Tales of ditches traditional turn-based battles often seen in JRPGs, and instead opts for, in this game, the dual raid linear motion battle system. Tales of Xillia is an evolution on the previous games in the series, with ideas and concepts that haven't been explored before or since, and keep itself wholly unique. Xillia's combat, compared to something like Vesperia, is immensely easier to pick up. Attacks come out much faster, there's a higher chance at proper combo strings from the opening dungeon, instead of having to wait until you get many more levels, skills, and arts, otherwise known as special attacks. In those prior games, combat was always slow at the beginning, due to still having to understand how the game's controls and what arts flow well into other attack strings. Plus, there's also directional inputs to learn, difficult characters to learn, movement options to learn. It can be quite a jumbled mess at the start. Xillia, by contrast, once again, is easy to understand and learn right out of the gate. It doesn't matter who you choose as your player character. Both Jude and Mila's combos in the early game are easy to pull off. You'll be able to scratch 10-hit chains in the opening dungeon if you play your cards right. Combat is significantly faster compared to other prior Tales games, and while Xillia isn't as fast as something like Berseria, that game has its own issues, and uses an entirely different combat system altogether, Xillia is the most newcomer-friendly and, dare I say, the best combat system in the entire series. Xillia's great combat comes in many forms, but I'll try and go in order, and take it slow. First, there's normal attacks and combo strings. Normal attacks use up the AC counter on the right. Their HP and TP are shown as well, and this is what determines what you can do. If you can use more normal attacks, or execute arts, or perform backsteps. Everything in the game's combat is tied to AC. You cannot do anything without it. While in the beginning you are limited in your AC counter, soon enough you'll learn and see ways to boost your AC counter, as well as give yourself other bonuses. The easiest way one can get AC is by getting lucky with critical hits. There are also skills that straight up increase your maximum AC count, allowing you to perform more moves in a consecutive combo. Making AC static and easy to acquire makes battles fast and fluid. During my playthrough, I recall being able to get about every character to have up to 10 AC at a time. This was great for melee-focused characters like Jude and Alvin, who were adept at keeping enemies stun-locked with their multi-hit arts. Additionally, spellcasters are also very fun to play as in this game too, primarily Rowan. In previous games, spellcasters weren't as enjoyable to play for many people because they often caused you to stay in the back and wait for a rather long time for spells to come out and execute. Rita from Vesperia is really the only exception since she has a skill right from the start that allows you to bypass that limitation. Still, I don't think she was nearly as fun as Yuri or Flynn or even Patty. Meanwhile, Xillia just makes spellcasters just as deadly as the melee characters. The spells from the beginning have very quick cast times, and are able to act out of spells just as quickly. I'm mainly highlighting Rowan here because his elemental spells were a blast to use, especially with his art tuning ability. Speaking of which, that leads into each character's unique skill exclusive to them. Every character has one aspect in their kit that allows them to utilize strategies only exclusively they can use. However, they're not all created equally. Jude has the ability Snap Pivot, where if you time a backstep perfectly, Jude dodges behind the targeted enemy and is able to get in a good amount of hits before said enemy recovers. His Snap Pivot is ideal for the first boss in the game, the girl in red. So not only does the game reward you with playing a very enjoyable combo-focused character from the start, but the game also teaches you the importance of timing your backsteps and dodges properly, and rewards you for doing that. Plus, it's useful throughout the runtime, not just useful in a select few circumstances, or not at all. But it doesn't fundamentally change how he plays. He's still a rushdown character, just able to get in a few extra hits with added evasion. Mila's main gimmick is that she's able to spirit shift arts, effectively having two arts in one. Say for example you have Fireball equipped in your art selection. If you tap the arts button, you will perform Flare Bomb, a much faster but not as powerful version of the art. Whereas if you hold it down, you perform the Fireball proper, but with a much longer charge time. Mila's ability is very enjoyable and fun to use, but I never got the sense that it was alternating the way that she played, since I only used it sparsely. Most of the time I pressed the button and performed the weaker versions of the art, since they did a sizable amount of damage anyway. A bit more damage at the cost of time and potential damage to me didn't seem that potent. Meanwhile, Alvin's main ability is that he's able to charge his weapon in order to unleash more powerful and devastating arts. After performing a normal art, if you hold down the art button, you can charge Alvin's weapon to have his gun and sword fuse together and glow, signaling that Alvin's weapon is charged. When this happens, your arts change completely, adding in new hits or animations that change the effectiveness of the art altogether. Alvin's ability allows you to become much more effective throughout battle, although I did feel like many of his upgraded arts were more so just the same, just with only one or two extra hits thrown in for good measure. I don't recall a sizable damage increase per hit or many arts that were completely changed up. There were some linked arts that were changed, but overall there wasn't much that did change about him. Elise's main ability is that when she taunts, she's able to alter Tipo, her little purple companion, her behavior. When Tipo's floating, Elise's physical arts will deal much more damage, but her spells are much weaker. The flip side of this is that if Tipo's on her back, Elise's spells will deal more damage, but her physical arts aren't as powerful. I apologize for sounding insensitive here, but I seriously think that this ability is stupid. A spellcaster like Elise has no place being in the front and fighting monsters when she has one of the most broken spells in the game, Negative Gate, which hits multiple enemies, multiple times, and can be easily spammed, especially if you get abilities that regain TP. There is no reason to have Elise go up to the front and engage with this ability. The game even gives you an ability during Elise's leveling process that automatically has Tipo switch to on, meaning on Elise's back. I had this equipped to her for the whole runtime, making her ability completely pointless. To the point that, in the whole 50-hour runtime, I only used the ability approximately 5 times. I understand that it says 18 up there, but I only extended that number to show up the animation for her. Speaking of which, her ability is activated by taunting. Taunting is already clunky as it is in this game, so why attach to that? If it was a passive ability or something completely different altogether, this complaint wouldn't nearly be as long, but I suppose it's for balance reasons. I may have been complaining that I wanted variety in these alternate playstyles so far, but I want them to be properly viable. Like how Engineer from Team Fortress 2 could be both a defensive player, taking points, and an aggressor with mini sentries. Both are viable in their own way and have proper upsides and downsides. This has nothing going for it. On the flip side, Rowan, as mentioned earlier, has the art tuning ability, which allows him to change arts by pressing or holding the art button after spells are cast. This does anything from adding more fireballs or moving a giant beam of water. It depends on the spell that's cast. Rowan's the only spellcaster in the series I've played up until this point that I've legitimately enjoyed playing as. Magilou and Berseria is fine, but if you know what you're doing, you can spam her Soul Gauge move and use all the most powerful arts at her disposal. And Rita's fun, but much like Elise, she suffers from the ever-memeable Tidal Wave spam.
Blah, blah, blah.
Thanks to Rowan's art tuning, he's actually fun to play and useful in the party in about any situation, since he has a wide variety of spells and can increase their effectiveness. Though, continuing on the idea of it not being a different kind of playstyle, this is more of an extension of the way that he plays, not a way that he can alternate how he actually operates. Finally, there's Leia, whose main ability is similar to Jude's, where if she backsteps at the right time, her staff extends and becomes a glowing Q-tip. Yeah, there's not much to this one either. Much like Elise, while I don't hate its inclusion, I feel like it's half-baked. The simple fact that her attacks have more range and her metal stick glows isn't enough to sell me that this ability is unique to her. She can just now attack from a further range, which eventually doesn't matter because every attack art moves you closer anyway, so it's not like there's a real difference. Then there's the second main draw of this game, linking. From the second area, players are able to link up with their party members and perform dual attacks with them. Their AI is synced up with the player, so if the player attacks, they attack. If there's an enemy approaching behind the player, you'll come in and defend them. But most importantly, it gives you access to 3 of the most important combat systems in the game: linked arts, partner skills, and overlimit. Partner skills are, much like the character abilities, exclusive to each member of the party, with each one providing a unique bonus for linking up with them. Some are inherently better than others though. Jude's, for example, was rarely used since I played as him so often. Whenever the player is knocked down to the ground, he will come to your side and help you to your feet, and then give you some help in return. This one isn't really too great. While it's nice to get the extra health, I do feel like there could have been some more to the mechanic. Perhaps Jude could exclusively stand in front of enemy attacks and block damage from the player instead of just doing this. As it stands, I found little reason to link with Jude to get this perk. Mila binds enemies in a small field and keeps them in place so you can wail on the enemy for a short time. This basically acts as free damage, and the only reason I ended up getting quite a few binds over the course of the game was because Mila was my primary link partner. Alvin's partner skill has him break enemy guards when they start to guard, stunning them, allowing you to get in more free hits. What's good about this one is it can be used to start combos and continue them while being used from seemingly any range, making him usually one of the most used partners to link with in any playthrough. Linking with Elise allows Tipo to sap the energy from an enemy and give some of their essence to you, basically allowing you to get free HP and TP when you're linked with her. This is another one that's very useful, especially in the early game when your options for gaining TP are limited. But as you go through the game, linking with her for her partner skill becomes less and less valuable since you gain TP at such an alarming rate that it's almost overkill. Linking with Rowan gives the player and Rowan himself an automatic magic guard, protecting the player from any spells an enemy casts. This one is useful. That's it. It's good, nothing else to say or improve on for this one. Finally, Leia's main partner skill is allowing her to steal items from the enemy, taking anything from weapons from bosses to materials from shops. This is the only partner skill that I consider to be a complete must-use, since the final boss in particular has a little special surprise that can repeatedly spam if you don't use it, but I'll get to you two later. Ultimately, the partner skills and unique abilities for each character don't really add too much in my opinion. They're nice additions and I wouldn't remove them, but they could have been expanded on a little bit more. As it stands now, they're just another tool in your already massive arsenal. There was no instance, other than the last stretch, where I wanted to say out loud, "Thank God I had this. This ability really saved my life in that fight." No. That's reserved for linked arts and overlimit. Linked arts are the bread and butter of Xillia's combat. As you go through a battle, you will slowly fill up a gauge on the left side of the screen. This gauge is divided into 5 different sections. When one section is filled, in order to progress the gauge further, you need to perform a linked art. Said arts are only accessible with certain party members using certain arts. Though I wish that they weren't able to be improved with repeat usage. Since the gauge is segmented, you aren't able to improve linked arts as fast, so you'll have to spend more time in battle trying to increase said gauge so you can get an upgraded linked art that's much better. But the requirements to get on these are frustrating. It feels like grinding, and to be honest, it is. And that's why I, and many others, don't like it. Despite that, linked arts add much to the game. They force you to change up your characters and link partners in order to maximize your damage potential and effectiveness in combat. Linking with Mila will give you different choices compared to linking with Leia. And while some linked arts carry over from other characters, most of the time they are exclusive arts that only you can perform with certain characters. And goddamn, when you begin to get in a groove with the combat and take down enemy after enemy, it's a total rush, and gives you plenty of "holy crap, that was awesome" moments during gameplay, be it intentional or unintentional.
Are you the monster?
No. Okay, so we cut that one, but
then our characters exploded?
wait.
I wasn't sure, but...
Whoa!
Oh my god!
Okay, so we're gonna try and, like, keep some battles in. You missed a chest, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I did.
We're gonna keep some battles in to see if we can do that again, because that was cool!
That was so... Okay, wait. I'll fight you in a second, dude, but...
Got it. Impact Cross!
Oh, neat.
Dude, that's Gaussian Draht's attack!
I guess it is. At first I was kind of like, oh, that one's kind of cool, I guess. And then it exploded.
That's
and I was
really
like, oh!
cool. There you go. Do it.
Boom! Oh! Oh! Oh my god!
Yes, no doubt about it.
Victory's ours.
We did it!
Mila!
Yes, it's finally over.
Tiger Blade Sigma!
Oh snap, dude! That was beautiful!
I was so waiting for you to see a reaction to that.
I feel like I did that on accident!
No, that's how you're supposed to do it.
Oh my god!
And adding to all that fun factor, there's overlimit. Overlimit is triggered when all 5 segments of the gauge are filled. At the very top, when you use an linked art, you'll go into overlimit, where your AC is no longer depleted, and you can use as many linked arts as you wish, with nothing stopping you except for TP. Overlimit's the cherry on top of the battle system. When overlimit is activated, you're allowed to go ham on enemies, stun-locking them and damaging them with the most powerful tools in your arsenal. It's really fun. And frankly, that's the best way I can describe this combat. It's fun. Every character is playable to a degree. Even Elise, a character that I'm the worst with, I can use to some effect, even if I spam the same AoE spells over and over again. But character archetypes I dislike in Tales, such as the Spellcaster, I find enjoyment in Xillia, and to this day, only Xillia. Compared to other games in the series, Abyss's issue is that the combat isn't fun, Vesperia's issue is that you can easily break the game towards the end, especially with Yuri, Symphonia's issue is that it's aged quite a bit, and the innovations in later titles make it hard to go back to it, and Berseria's issue is that it feels like it's not properly tested. But Xillia feels mostly polished. Every character has their uses in almost any situation, unlike prior games, and frankly, Xillia's gameplay is great to carry a single-player action JRPG. But thankfully, Xillia has a cooperative feature. Another one of Tales of's main selling points is that it's always had the option of being a 4-player cooperative game. You and 3 other friends saving the world as anime heroes. It's fun. And thankfully, through the power of Parsec, I was able to make this a reality. So a special shout out again to Flaragar, Colin D, and Xavier Revolution for sitting down with me for playing a few co-op sessions to get some more footage. We had a great time, and playing with other friends who are good at the game leads to chaotic fun.
You know,
I know.
You know what's funny? This girl I work with, my current crush, she said the same thing. She was like, "You always sound like you have a thesis."
He does, except that's the thing, you do.
I like talking like that because it's funny.
It's
You're
funny.
sitting here trying to tell me on a product. I'm like, sir, I just want a number 2 with onions.
Sir, I'm just
Ooh,
trying to fucking
onions.
watch a movie here. Can you please?
What are you doing in my house? Fucking Sunspark.
Oh, you stole her. Okay, you want to talk about broken? Flare Tornado in Berseria with Magimu.
Oh, that shit's ridiculous.
It's stupid. Magimu
Get away
is,
from
like,
me.
probably the most broken character in that game, actually. If we're
No,
not counting
Velvet. Oh wait, yeah. If we aren't calling Velvet, then yeah, probably.
I stand corrected.
Damn it, I haven't gotten the footage for that one yet.
Well, it'll show up again.
Hopefully.
Yo! Nice!
Go!
Yeah, this battle. Oh, me like a kiss you! Oh my god! It's so fun.
I wanted to take her away right after you said that, but goddammit, you didn't let me.
On up Fireball. Why is Fireball on circle?
Because it's the first one you start with. Are you one of those people that takes off the first spell you start with?
I put Severed Fate there.
Oh my god.
Because I like this setup here. Now go down.
I'm sorry I played differently from you.
Nah, he's playing wrong, Mecha. Don't listen to him.
No, I'm playing right here. Fireball goes right there.
Oh my god.
That's
Right-
ugly. Oh my god.
Right stick left blue sphere.
What?
I have my setup here. And then right
Oh,
stick
man.
air pressure.
This ain't it. Oh my
Okay, and then what about
god.
down?
Nothing yet because I don't have enough hearts.
However, this leads into the first main issue I have with the game, and that's that Xillia 1 and 2 are really only playable in co-op with one other person instead of 2 or 3 others. Since linking is a thing, no matter what you do, unless you apparently modded it in, the AI will take control of the player when you link with someone. So you can effectively stop the player from actually playing the game when you use one of the core mechanics of the combat system. Now, this issue is minor and only affects certain players, and in our case we were able to make it work and work around it. Well, if you call fucking with other people's setups working around it.
Do your job, Alvin.
Fuck no! You do your job!
Nah. Hey! I did it for 2 seconds.
I just want to do Ruination Fangs.
Stop, please.
You wanna play that game, bitch? I'll play that
I
game.
did it for
Oh
2
my-
seconds.
I don't give a shit. You complained when I did it for 2 seconds.
However, the combat actually does have some problems. For one, enemies aren't all created equally. This does add variety to the encounters that you're in, but it's once you start fighting against human enemies that things really get annoying. Human enemies like Exodus members have multiple items they can use, as well as multi-hit normal attacks. Translation? They're annoying to fight, and there's not much you can do to counter them back. You stagger from any attack that connects, making you unable to even get out of a situation like that until you either die or a party member comes in and helps you. And when the AI aren't linked together, they act as dumb as a post. So that doesn't help. Going back to Overlimit, the only real issue I have with it is that you have to use it when you fill up the gauge. You can't save it and continue to use linked arts. You have to activate it and use it all up, no questions asked. Vesperia solved this issue somewhat by allowing you to gain overlimit if you played well enough, or if you spammed the same few multi-hit arts, but the fact that you didn't need to consume the gauge was a good step in the right direction. And since the overlimit gauge is shared between the party, you can't have more than 1 or 2 characters with overlimit at a time. Even though I've been singing the praises of Xillia's combat, it is rather inconsistent when it comes to its enemy design, actual combat with linked arts, normal arts, and overlimit, and bosses themselves. It's unfortunate. Which brings me to difficulty. Tales of Xillia's difficulty is widely argued among the fanbase. Mainly, you take one of 2 sides. Either the game and its sequel are among the hardest games in the series, or it's among the easiest games in the series next to Tales of the Abyss. Really, it's rather surprising just how much of a differing opinion this is. In my eyes, Xillia isn't that hard. For the most part. On normal difficulty, you will steamroll through this game. If you've played a game with similar combat to Xillia, you will feel right at home. I played Vesperia 2 times through, a small amount of Symphonia, and up until the second act of Tales of the Abyss. And by the time that I really sat down and played Xillia, I was right at home. It wasn't hard in the slightest, especially in the early games, which is ironic since your characters are so much weaker and underpowered at the start compared to the end. So, in my infinite wisdom, I changed the difficulty from normal to hard before even getting to the first boss in the Kijara Sea Falls. The difference? Night and day. On normal, average fights against monsters in the overworld lasted about 15 seconds. On hard, that time was tripled. Against normal enemies, playing the game on hard mode is so much more rewarding. It allows you to be in battle more, practicing and using arts more so you can properly get combos down to use on those bosses mentioned earlier. Plus, it allows you to get more storage for your overlimit gauge, and use linked arts more often. Enemies are more tanky, but they're not too tanky. You do enough damage quickly that it's not a hindrance. You don't take much more damage if you switch to hard mode either, so I feel like playing the game on hard difficulty is by far the best way to play. Until you get to the bosses. And frankly, this is a battle that I don't think the developers are ever going to win. See, I get the same enjoyment from Tails combat the same way I get enjoyment from Devil May Cry. In DMC, I find the game most fun when you're endlessly juggling your opponents in a wide open arena, hitting them with endless attacks while you are untouchable, and it's all within the player's own input. DMC gives you that sweet dopamine feeling by doing the following things. When attacking, you see the style ranking go up on the side. The music begins to kick in.
All things end. You don't have a chance. It's over. Out of
You're moving so fast, swapping between so many powerful moves in your arsenal. It's about killing demons, but killing them with style. Smokin' sexy style. It's about whipping demon ass in the most over-the-top, insane, bullshit way possible. That's DMC in a nutshell. I mean, look at some of this. Come on, you can't tell me that didn't at least look cool. Tails combat does a similar thing, just less fast-paced. You get the same feeling of satisfaction when you see the hit counter go up, the damage numbers skyrocket, you stun lock your enemy in linked arts and mystic arts, and you generally feel unstoppable. But then you get to the bosses and they throw that concept out the window. Now, not all bosses are like this, but when you design your combat around large groups of enemies with small health bars to be easily combated, it's not fun to go up against an opponent that breaks that flow so easily. So imagine how it feels when Mr. King of Azul over here is able to teleport in and out of reality and juggle you in the air, leaving you unable to do anything until you're dead. Or when he uses his Mystic Art, he'll confuse the rest of the party, destroying your chances at beating him. I mean, this guy was so difficult, I spent 2 hours of my life trying to kill him. And here's my reaction when I actually did it. Fuck you, Gaius! Fuck you! Really, that's the issue with the combat as a whole. Sometimes it's perfectly playable, with clear sets of rules down for both sides. But in order for there to be any real threat to the player, the enemy has to break those rules in order to even put a dent into the player's health. And this is an issue present throughout the series, not just of Xillia. But thankfully, the combat in Xillia still has more hits than misses, and it's still fun to play more than 10 years later. However, that's not all, since there's also the added issue of exploration and maintaining shops. Throughout the adventure, you'll be picking up random items and monster materials that you can trade into shops to upgrade them, enabling to get more weapons, armor, and accessories. Now, I don't have an issue with this in concept. The idea of having to upgrade shops and continue to invest in them as the game goes on encourages you to continue to battle and explore so you can get more materials. Plus, these shops get insane the more you upgrade them, making previously expensive items feel like chump change. It's just the execution. You quickly realize that only proper items that you want to invest into these shops are the items categorized under the multiplier on the side. Anything other than that, aside from the miscellaneous materials, are completely worthless to use. If that multiplier isn't listed up there, don't use the items you got. So sometimes when you go from town to town, you'll only be able to use one certain type of material. You might have a bunch, or you might have a little. It's not consistent. Plus, the way the world is structured doesn't help matters. Simply put, you're going through variations of fields, valleys, and mountain ranges. This wouldn't be an issue if the same sort of design wasn't used for every single travel space in between each town and dungeon, making them all blend together. In this game's case, the destination is more important, and more specifically, more memorable than the journey there. And hell, even the dungeons aren't safe from this issue sometimes, as many of them feel like the similar cave-like structure, but instead of one being just a standard mine, one's got fire in it, or one's got ice in it. Dungeons blend together, and it's really disappointing. However, I don't want to suggest that the fact that these issues override the whole experience. Xillia's gameplay features more positives than negatives, and even though the diamond's been roughened up in less important areas, the general combat still shines brightly. Frankly, it's a shame that Team Destiny, the original development team for Tales, closed its doors in 2012, a year after Xillia released, because this combat was the peak of their work. And it's a shame that, other than Xillia 2, the franchise's combat systems haven't peaked since. No other game in the series has made me feel like such an unstoppable force other than Xillia. Nearly everything feels perfect when it's working right, and added features like linking really help add a unique identity to the game's combat. And it's a great way to connect story and gameplay. And that leads us to the next question. Is Xillia's story even worth experiencing? Xillia's narrative has been met with everything from praise to mixed response. However, I've always been confused by a couple things when it came to criticism. At least, until now. From the beginning, we're given the option of choosing which protagonist to play as, Jude or Mila. Both campaigns are roughly the same in length, with the only real differences being battle music, different skits and side quests appearing, but most importantly, the ability to see certain cutscenes. Sometimes the party will get split up, and due to your choice here, you'll only see things from their perspective compared to the other. Now, this choice is novel and appreciated, but please, for the love of all that is good, play Jude's campaign first. I didn't play Mila's campaign for this video, but from what I've seen and heard, Mila's campaign focuses so much around her that it's honestly distracting. Whereas if you pick Jude, you get a lot more scenes with the overall cast compared to our leading heroine. The only character that gets a lot of development time with Mila is Alvin, but one character getting growth isn't enough to justify the many others having their development off-screen. Though, regardless, until you play both campaigns, you'll need to accept that some things won't make sense until you beat both. From the very start, the plot takes a back seat for a few minutes as the game sets up the world and the place the characters live in. Jude in particular being quite the accomplished student at Talum Medical School, even being promoted as the top assistant for one of the professors. Though exploring will explain that some people doubt Jude behind his back. Continuing to show that Jude is smarter than he looks, when going to find said professor in a locked-down military laboratory, Jude examines and realizes that the soldiers forged his signature to mask that he was officially let in. Realizing something's wrong, he looks around to try and find an alternative way in, with Mila providing said entrance for him. They meet, share a little moment together, and both intrude into the building on their own accord. The player is introduced to combat and exploring around dungeons in this section, along with Lilium Orbs, which allows you to customize character builds and help them gain new stats and arts. The reason why I didn't touch on this in the gameplay section is that there really isn't much to this thing. It's just a linear progression tree that allows you to get new abilities and helps your characters get new stats. At the very least, the best thing that it does for you is show how much different you are from the beginning all the way to the end. The other important detail here is the introduction of the MacGuffin into the plot, the Lance of Kresnik, a weapon created by the military classified as a Spyrex. The huge issue with all of this is that the balance between nature of human and spirits would be disrupted if it were to continue existing. So Mila attempts to use her power as the Lord of Spirits to eliminate the device. But it fails, and she loses her power along the way, getting herself Metroided and having to force herself to live as a normal human being. And Jude the Do-Gooder hops along after her, forever intertwined with her fate. It would be great had it not foreshadowed Xillia's greatest narrative fault. See, the issue with Xillia's plot is that it's not very good. Well, okay, let me try and see if I can phrase this the best I can. The plot is very boring, because really, the entire game's plot is just a MacGuffin hunt. Why do I call the Lance a MacGuffin? Well, you barely see it over the course of the game, you barely hear or see its effects on the world, only in small areas, it's constantly being dropped out of sight, and even when people have access to it, it's rarely used. And it isn't until the creator god himself is tied up to the thing that it truly becomes a problem. You don't care about the Lance or its capabilities since it's rarely shown to you. I didn't care about this thing when I first saw it, or when I played through the game. I cared about Mila, I cared about Jude, I cared about Leia, I cared about the cast, not the plot. Xillia's main issue with me is that the plot isn't engaging from start to finish. Hell, I'd argue that it's probably the weakest part of the entire game. When people discuss Xillia, I don't hear talk about the game's story. I hear about how the characters and how they're arguably the best of the series, how the main theme is wonderfully chosen, and how woven it is into the character's development, how the cast truly feel like friends, not the plot itself, everything that surrounds it. I'm going to get the plot out of the way now because it's rather shocking. Even though this game involves 4 factions, 2 countries, 2 worlds, and 2 races of individuals, Tales of Xillia's plot is merely about all 4 of these factions attempting to gain control of the MacGuffin, and either use it or destroy it for their own benefit. One who's played this game could argue that the Lance is important and the catalyst to characters' development, and I would agree for half the factions. Noctigal only wants to use the Lance to ensure that he has power, and Exodus wishes to use the Lance to save their own world, preserving Olympians' lives and ensuring that they stick around. But for Mila and Gaius, if you took the Lance out of the equation and just included a war between nations, which does happen in this game, both of them would end up sticking to their ideals and seeing them through to the end. Each of the main characters in the cast, and the antagonists, changes their outlook not because of the Lance itself, but rather because of other characters. I'm trying to hold off on discussing them for now because it's these characters that holds the story up. Plus, it doesn't help that I've realized how samey many of the stories and tales are. At the very least, there are always overlapping plot points or cliches that the writers use. There's always moments in the beginning where the protagonist is thrust from their hometown for some miraculous reason. There's always a shifty member of the party who not many trust. Said shifty member ends up betraying the party or working for the enemy in one way or another. There's always a one-on-one duel with the protagonist and said party member for whatever reason the game gives you. There is always, at one point or another, a war between 2 factions. There's always one character who has a lot more power than they realize. There's always some hidden or underlying message about taking care of the world and its environment. I could go on. In my opinion, any narrative that doesn't use its own creative devices to push characters forward to grow and change means that your narrative is not good. What this game does do well is have great characters. There's the obvious skits I'll get to in a bit, but for the time being, I'm going to explain why Xillia has among the best casts in the series. However, before I get to why I love them so much, I'm going to go through a few bad points, mainly how each character's arc progresses. Going from the worst to the best, I feel like Elise doesn't really have a character arc. From the immediate moment she joins the party, she just wants a place to belong. She now has that by sticking with Jude in the party. So when she mentions later on that she just wants to defend the people she loves, it doesn't feel like a proper progression. There is Zhao in his final words, but I don't feel like that really changed her, just reinforced her actions. Plus, once again, it's an iteration on Mila's motivations and actions as well, making her feel unfortunately dull character-wise. Rowan doesn't also have much going on too. He recognizes Mila's determination and contemplates what she's attempting to do. He believes that he has to make up for what mistakes he made in the past by attempting to change things in the present, and it's why he chooses to accompany the party. That in and of itself is fine, but after Noctigal gets impaled, Rowan just kinda sticks around. He doesn't develop any further, only butting heads with Wingle because the edgy tactician over here keeps reminding Rowan of his past mistakes. Now that he's confronted his demons, he's got nothing else to face. Let it go, man. Alvin's easily the most complex character in the entire game, primarily due to his multiple alignments, both to the main party, Exodus, and at one point or another the Chimeriad, but primarily Pressa. He lies and backstabs his way through life, not forming any real connections with people. He's honestly a huge dick. But he does it all to restore Olympias, his home world, to make sure that it doesn't die. All he wants for his home world to be saved. By the end, after suffering heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss, he eventually loses his own path after Mila died, and confronts that he cannot lie anymore. He finally learns that making true bonds takes a lot of effort. It's good, but it also is something that doesn't resonate with me personally. What also helps Alvin's case for me is how it happens to him after Mila dies. With nothing left, no reason to keep going, his entire purpose gone, he goes off the deep end, attempting to kill Jude and making his way back to Olympias, accepting his and his own world's death. He shoots Leia in the back, causes a fight between him and Jude, along with Jude's internal monologue causing him to rise from the ashes and become a better person, continuing to further Mila's plight after her gone. I wanted to highlight this scene personally because I do believe that it is possibly the peak of the entire plot and character progression for 3 of the best characters in the game. Though the fact that the cast continues to let him back into the party even after all the shit he does is kind of silly and nonsensical. Jude. Guys, Alvin gave you up to the Sherrilton mayor. Sure, he was understanding of things, but he gave you up. He gave the party up to Exodus when arriving in Shandu. He fucking gave the location of the key of the lance to the most powerful man in Riza Maxia. You should not let him back in the party. Ugh. No wonder this is a meme. And before getting to the protagonists, there's Leia. I personally love Leia's development, even if she has very little amount of it. She has a lot of scenes where she's just trying to figure out what her plan really is. Much like Jude, she has no direction in her life. She's got no plans on what to do. By the end, in her own words, she says, "I'm living my life as I see fit." Which to me is another way of saying, I don't know yet, I'm going with the flow. Now, normally this would be at the bottom, but seeing as how I'm going through this very thing myself, I relate to Leia quite a bit. At the very least, she understands by the end that she needs to figure things out for herself. At least she learned that. I'm not even on that step. I can't even care enough to figure out what the things I want to do is. Sorry. The biggest issue with Leia's development is how in that final scene, that big moment that is supposed to be the culmination of everything she learned on the journey, is basically a conversation of...
Wow, I spent so much time chasing after Jude. I need a reason for living.
Why not have it be trying to impress Jude?
Holy crap. That's a great idea!
Yeah, Tails Discord, you were right about that one. And then we get to the main pair, Jude and Mila. I've debated on where I stand with these two, and eventually, I've concluded that I love them a lot. I haven't played enough games in the series that I can say conclusively that they're the best pairing, but I do feel like they're pretty high up there. Firstly, both are very likable from the get-go. While having a slow burn on a character isn't a bad thing, my interest will wane from a game fast if I have a main protagonist that I dislike, especially in a franchise that is championed for its characters. Both characters are intertwined in their development. Jude sticks with Mila because he has nothing else left. His actions, both directly and indirectly caused by Mila herself, caused him to be expelled from his school, losing his medical license. Mila's plight is now all he's got. He sticks with her so that he has purpose, and because of that, Everything they go through together, he grows as a person. It's great, honestly. He goes from likable and relatable to excellent and inspirational. Though his motivations simply copy and continue what Mila started. As mentioned earlier, his motivation eventually becomes the same as hers, but it's because of Mila's conviction that he truly believes in her goal and tries to help her fulfill her wish to protect humans and spirits. He doesn't have a unique goal to himself, which is disappointing. Finally, there's Mila. Before playing this game, I had a lukewarm opinion on Mila. I thought she was fine, at times very enjoyable, but in the grand scheme of the main cast, I felt like she was just fine. But after playing through it, I realize now that Mila's the driving force for literally every character. The entire party, and the antagonists, all have their motivation through Mila Maxwell's existence and conviction. And it's through this, and her bond with Jude, that made me love Mila. Once again, I do need to emphasize how important Mila's determination is. Mila never falters. Even if you were to remove the use of her legs, she would crawl her way to her objective. And she did. Even if you were to send assassins after her, she'd wipe you out. Or do awesome flips. If you were to kill her, she'd just cheat death and make it back. Mila's resolve to see her mission through is unparalleled, and it's why I and many others love her so much. And the pair together are wonderful. They have great scenes together, both in their small moments and biggest defining moments. Jude grows through Mila, and Mila realizes how precious life is after spending all this time with the main party. I mean, almost immediately after becoming human, there's a scene where the three just share a meal together, and it's precious. It's the first time Mila's eaten human food, and just look at her! To think that this is how they started the journey together.
I see. If you stick with the person who saved you, then you won't need any more saving. Clever boy.
Boy? You don't look that much older than me. My name's Jude Mathis.
I'm Mila. Mila Maxwell.
And this is how they end the game together. I really can't describe in words how good this dynamic is. You really just need to play the game yourself to understand. Then there's the other thing that holds this game together. The theme of life purpose. Everyone in this world needs to determine their own worth, and find out how to live their life and what their ultimate goal is. Because of this theme, every character has their own will and beliefs. And I feel like the best way to describe the main theme is through this.
It is purpose that created us. Purpose that connects us. Purpose that pulls us, that guides us, that drives us. It is purpose that defines. Purpose that binds us.
The main theme is one that I love, because it's one that I am having issues grasping myself. And it's why I prefer it to Vesperia's theme or Berseria's theme. The final thing about this game, and really the Tales franchise, that makes it stand out from others, are the skits. Skits are little party conversations that the party can have with each other, and they're full of charm. These conversations can tackle anything, and that's why I love them. Skits appear frequently, and there's so many of them that it's honestly hard to get them all. And they will give the player a wide range of them, from humorous...
Look out, guys. There are little bugs everywhere.
I wonder if Mila gets bitten a lot in that outfit.
You didn't know? She swats the bugs away with her hair.
Wow, like the tail of a cow!
Don't compare my crowning glory to the tail of a cow.
Crowning glory? I didn't expect such vanity from the Lord of Spirits.
Sylph styled my hair for me. He said, "You're in human form, so you need to take care of your appearance."
You had the great spirit of wind style your hair? That's incredible!
Yes, I'm quite fond of it. If I swing it around quickly, I can distract a foe between attacks.
So you do swish it like a cow?
To very tender and warm ones?
Oh, it is you! I never forget what these feel like!
Stop it, Tipo. Let go.
No, it's what you get for making us worry! That's right! I want a hug too! Leave some room for me!
Even you, Leia?
No point trying to fight it.
Fine. I surrender. I'm sorry for what I put you all through. That includes you, Alvin.
That's really not necessary.
No need to be coy, or Mila won't let you into the group hug.
What, you plan on joining in too?
I don't mind.
Very well then.
And I'm out.
And even more suggestive ones.
I have you to thank for saving Jude.
Not at all. Jude was quite a help to me. Thanks to his direct tethering with me, I was able to recharge much of my lost mana.
Jude, you direct tethered with her?
Yeah. Muse asked me to. Was that bad?
Bad? It's, direct tethering is something a spirit and a human do when,
Since we were together constantly, he was able to fill me with loads of mana.
I had no idea you were that kind of man.
Mila, wait! Why is she so angry?
I can't believe you'd ask me to explain that to you. Do you just want to hear me say it? Is that what you're into?
Someone tell me what is going on with these spirits.
The skits make the party feel like actual friends and companions. Compared to other RPGs that only allow the characters to bond when the story dictates it, in Tales, they can bond over literally everything, explaining their preferences, their pasts, their skills. They laugh, get emotional, get angry, recall past events, and give their current take on the situation. It's great stuff. And it's something that once again gives Tales a unique identity. And it doesn't stop at the skits either. During battle, you'll even get victory quotes from the party, and the same hijinks ensue. Hilarious, goofy, serious, it's all here.
It's time for a victory pose.
Okay!
Like this?
Act cool.
Yeah!
Remember that practice makes perfect.
Okay? Demon fist, demon fist, demon fist.
I was referring to physical training.
Ah, right. Sorry.
High five!
Like this?
All right!
You sure like this kind of stuff.
Victory is gained by
Power.
Friends!
Strategy.
Hard work!
Let's coordinate, people.
I think that works in our favor.
Character is a big part of the Tales franchise, and Xillia really does capitalize on that, giving us arguably the best cast in this series. And that's what makes the story serviceable. Not because of the plot, but because the characters are memorable from beginning to end. The worst thing that a game can do after you beat it is immediately forget it after you turn the system on. And thankfully, I have not forgotten about this wonderful pack of munchkins, and I likely never will. Tales of Xillia's presentation is wonderful. Primarily speaking about the art design, Xillia is a game that is layered and beautiful. But seemingly because of the rushed development cycle, it is rough around the edges. Many elements that can be ripped from any fantasy story are ripped out without anything to make it unique to the series or this game. I don't doubt the developers' creativity. These guys have been making this now for 15 years with the franchise, and they've created plenty of unique locations and dungeons for the player and characters to explore and visit. Yet for this game, there really isn't anything about Rizamaxia or Olympias that makes me think they're unique. Plus, technical issues hurt the art's presentation. It's always difficult to immerse yourself in the world when it's always popping in place right in front of you, be it inhabitants or entire contraptions. It's honestly kind of amazing for the wrong reasons, since this trait is present in every single game after Xillia came out. Even Berseria, which released primarily for the PlayStation 4 and later PC, has this same issue. At least when cutscenes do occur and they're properly motion captured, they do a great job of selling the scene, with excellent cinematography making characters expressive through their movements and camera placements, though not so much with their facial expressions. Sometimes they're fine, but other times they're almost goofy to a point. I guess I'm spoiled thanks to other games I've played. However, when automated animation takes over, much like the rest of the other games in the series, they're very stiff and awkward. Other fans are willing to give this a pass, but I can't. Thankfully, the voice cast also helps save the presentation. With a lot of recognizable voice actors coming in to lend their talents, this game's performances are something else. Sam Riegel, Matthew Mercer, Todd Haberkorn, Liam O'Brien, Travis Willingham, Ali Hillis, and even Patrick Seitz all join the voice cast. There's a reason why 4 of the actors I mentioned are on Critical Role. They all have great chemistry with each other, and they always seem like they're having a blast with the characters they play.
8. You notice him go for it.
Leave no trace.
No, I'm taking this.
Put it back or
I'm
I'll...
taking this. Isn't worth my time. I'm taking this.
Put it Down, or I'll leave you here.
You guys all stop at the landing as you turn back.
Forward, put that fucking thing down.
My hand starts to glow with Eldritch Blast energy. I will fucking leave both of you here. We're either a team or you're working for yourselves. Decide.
You guys are all watching this in the landing.
I walk out.
There isn't a single voice in this game that I don't think is awful, with the only two exceptions being Mila and Elise to a lesser extent. Elise I'm on the fence about, since she is a child and she is voiced by Karen Strassman, someone who voiced a child character who I am willing to die for, and a robot with boobs, so normally I would give her a pass. But diving back into the writing, my main issue with her is how easily she spouts out the same sentence in high-tense situations. I must protect my friends.
I know why, but why?
Really, the more significant problem here is Mila. As stated earlier, the English voice direction wanted her to sound more stoic. She certainly does in some situations, but it's like she loses all sense of emotion when there isn't a life or death situation. She doesn't sound empathetic, she sounds monotone. And for someone who's lived in this form for 20 years, I'm surprised Mila isn't more expressive, even if she's supposedly a god in human form. And much like the other aspects of the presentation, the music has both plenty of great and plenty of average aspects to it. Series regular and legendary composer Motoi Sakuraba lends his talents to the franchise once again. Single-handedly taking on the entire soundtrack for himself, there are plenty of tracks that impress. Venmont's town theme is wholly unique to its nighttime feel and atmosphere. The battle themes are wonderful no matter what character you pick or where you are in the story. And Believe in My Flag truly makes the player feel like you're following these characters' ideals. But I have to say, the best song in the game is one of the last. The final battle between Jude, Mila, Gaius, and Muse. But for as many tracks that enhance the experience, there's plenty more that, while enjoyable in the moment, don't leave as much of an impact. And I'd argue that there's more of a ratio of average songs as opposed to great ones. Those 4 songs that I mentioned are my favorites in the entire 80+ track list. So when a large ratio of these I can't even recall the names of, it shows that Xillia's music is lacking in what feels like a personality. Overall, Tales of Xillia's story is serviceable with wonderful characters and villains, which makes the game special. But the main plot itself is very thin, and lacks some of the impact in its story that other RPGs can pull off. The Tales series had always had side quests, but they've never been the focus for the franchise. And not wanting to beat around the bush here, there's a reason for that. Xillia 1 especially doesn't do much to really push forward that the side content is worth doing, since many of said side content is just glorified fetch quests. The game makes it painfully obvious from the beginning that these quests will be apparent throughout the story, but since many of them require you to explore and kill monsters or collect certain items, be it from gathering points or from enemies themselves, it's pretty easy and understandable to see why I and many others don't view Xillia's side content in such high regard. But, much like a river in the desert, sometimes Xillia will grant the player unique quests that allow you to interact with the inhabitants of the world of Riza Maxia and Olympias in ways that allow you to get a better sense of your party or to give the world-building context. Many, like Alvin's side quest with his mother, really sheds the light on some of his actions and motivations, especially in the second act when you reach Shandu, and further sheds light on Isla, a woman who's much more of a horrible person than one might think. Or there's all the side quests that allow Jude and his father to explore their toxic relationship, and how Dr. Mathis became the way he is. It's great stuff. But when many of these side quests only amount to you looking around or getting into a single battle to give you some gold or an accessory that you won't even use, the ratio of lackluster side quests truly fit the word filler. These missions are a chore. If you had to do each one of them back to back to back to back to back, you'd give up on them too. No amount of character progression can dissuade me from saying that these side quests are a waste of time, for the most part. The Tales franchise is one of my favorite video game franchises of all time, and thus, it's been difficult to properly try and explain what makes the series so good and special without getting personal about it. I certainly failed, but I gave it my best try. But that's the thing. No matter how hard you try, you can't fully suppress how you feel about a game. And more specifically in my case with this, about art. And when I play Tales, I feel happy. I start off the conclusion here because I want to show you how difficult it's been for me to make a definitive verdict for Tales of Xillia. Does it have the best characters? Not entirely. Does it have the best narrative? Goodness no. Does it have the best gameplay? Possibly. Xillia's got many high points and many low points, yet this game and the franchise has always won out for me in the end because of how high those points really are. Tales of is defined by its characters, and this is going to be the last time I make this point. When Yuri committed his first murder, your heart stopped. When Luke cut his hair, you knew he was going to change. And when Mila died, you understood how far her convictions were truly going to push her. This is what defines Tales, and it's why I love it so much. Tales of Xillia is a game that I do believe is worth playing. It isn't perfect, it never was, and there are arguably better games in this franchise to play too. But for someone like me, I feel like this was the perfect place to start. And it could be for you too. The game isn't for everyone, and I can understand that. If you can't handle anime, JRPGs, and many Japanese game developer tropes, you won't likely enjoy Xillia or the Tales franchise in general. But I implore you, give this series a shot. I do think it's one of the best, and as I'm writing this, the Tales franchise is possibly my favorite franchise of all time. What I'm most thankful for is Bandai Namco even putting in the effort to get this game made for Tales' 15th anniversary. Considering the rush of development, cut content, and so much more, I'm glad this game is here. It spawned a new fan for the Tales franchise, and I'm thankful to have this series. So where the hell have I been? Mentally? Nowhere. And that's the problem. This entire year has been a very stressful time for me. From having to deal with this whole worldwide issue, to my job, to social and societal pressures, and most importantly, my own mental psyche, I've been having a lot of issues simply being productive. It's why this video took about a year to make, and why there was a change of plans. Xillia was a game that I wanted to cover on the channel for a long time, since I have been a big fan of the Tales series for a while. I said I was going to do a different game in my update video a while back, but things changed. Persona 3 took a lot of mental fortitude out of me, and frankly, I didn't want to continue playing a game that made me feel miserable. I'm not canceling this video outright just yet, but it is put on hold until I feel better about myself and everything that surrounds me. I'm happy that this video finally got out, and to any of you out there who are watching, especially my family, I know you're there, thanks for being patient, and for not leaving behind. Hopefully. This video is undoubtedly the most collaborative video I've ever made, and I want to thank everyone who was involved. Firstly, I'd love to give a big shout out to Colin D, theRadBrad, and Flowergar once again. The first two for being available for 2 very long co-op sessions as we went through the mid-game. Flowergar joined for separate sessions, but I am especially thankful to him since he was essential to even get the game running on my machine, because that's a video for another day. Links to all of them are in the description. Check them all out. Next, ComicFoil, The Green Scorpion, and Yumi Hitose. Comic for allowing me to use his Let's Play footage for both for showcasing a point, and for replacing some of my own footage when it got corrupted. Thanks man, I owe you one. And to all of you who haven't, check out Comic's channel and give him a subscription. He's one of my favorites on the platform. I highly recommend his character study series, specifically his episode on Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite. And, come on guys, he's 800 subs away. He's so close. Give him 2,000 by the end of the year. It'd make his and my day. Green Scorpion for lending his voice to Rowan towards the end. Plus, being a part of ComicFoil's Xillia Let's Play. Once again, check out his channel. 52,000 subs and counting. Give him a watch and subscribe. And last, and certainly not least, Yumi. Yumi was the one who lent her voice to Leia towards the end of the video. She spends her weekends on Twitch, where she runs Dungeons & Dragons with her friends, DMing the entire experience out for them all. If you need voice work done, give her a ring. And she's one of the best dungeon masters I've ever seen. Follow her on Twitch and Twitter, please. Thank you all for watching. I'll be seeing you later.